The RBA seems upbeat about the state of Australia's economy, saying the coronavirus and the bushfire crisis might only be a blip and will not have long-term effects on the economy. Joining me now is Peter Switzer, the founder of the Switzer Report. Good to see you, Peter. I don't wish to verbal the RBA, but that's what they were saying, reading between the lines. Is that the right course of action to take?
Well, you know, Laura, there are some people saying, what is the RBA smoking? Because, for example, let's take Shane Oliver from AMP Capital. Shane thinks interest rates are going to end up, the cash rate, at 0.25%. Now, we're at 0.75% now, so that would be two more cuts if Shane's right. Now, it's basically a bet between economists. Shane's an economist. He thinks the economy is going to be slow enough to justify rate cuts. On the other hand, the Reserve Bank, they put out a number for this year, 2020, of 2.75%. That's a good number, growing to 3% in 2021. And I think there's a real lot of debating going on when it comes to those sorts of figures. But I did actually go looking to see if there's any justification for the Reserve Bank to be positive about where the economy is heading. And I was quite surprised at some of the good numbers. Laura, can I share them with you?
Please do.
Well, so the ANZ job ad, which is a forward indicator, that was the best reading in 7 months. The Internet Vacancy Index was the biggest gain in 22 months. Housing credit was the first increase in 2.5 years. That's the annual figure. Loans on credit cards was the biggest monthly increase in 2 years. Unemployment, of course, is at 5.1%. That's the lowest in 10 months. Weekly consumer confidence from ANZ, highest since early December. Council building approvals, that increase was the biggest in 19 months, with house prices rising, and the IMF increased the world growth outlook from 2.9 to 3.3%. So when you put it all together, there are some reasons for the Reserve Bank to be positive, but against that you've got the question marks over the coronavirus, which the Americans don't seem to be worried about tonight. You might have seen that the Dow Jones was up over 500 points. But I also think that the RBA is gambling that the federal government is going to spend up big time to repair the problems from the bushfires, and that's going to be the big fiscal bet that I think the Reserve Bank is making, which will mean they won't have to cut interest rates as many times as Shane and other economists believe.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We've been talking about this silver lining out of a crisis as tragic as it was with the bushfires. Along with that and the rebuilding effort can come stimulus to the economy. Are you saying that will be quite significant? Because there's been, on the sidelines, calls for the government to do more for many months, even before the bushfire crisis. I mean, Labor, for example, said that they should cut income tax even further and bring that timeline forward. So might the bushfire stimulus mean that we don't, economic-wise, need to cut income tax?
Cut income tax or cut rates even further. I think the bottom line is this: we will see a slow, probably first quarter of this year, because you've got all those negative implications in January. Remember, all the holidaying areas of New South Wales and Victoria were badly affected by the fires, so that's going to have a GDP effect. But the fact that the government's already promised $2 billion, individual states are going to have to spend as well, and I think in the budget there'll be more spending, and so that's the reason why the Reserve Bank is guessing that we'll grow at 2.75% this year, bigger than what most economists expect. But you're right, I think there will be more spending, and I think the multiplier effects will be probably bigger than what we're currently guessing at the moment, and the Reserve Bank might prove that it's not smoking anything at all. It's actually very good economics forecasting.
I wonder what you do think they're smoking, but we'll leave that question for another time, actually.
Yes.
Now, the markets. So markets are doing pretty well. Wall Street, the Asian markets have rebounded. China was offline for about 6 days over the coronavirus. It came back online. There was a bit of a dip, doing quite well. The Aussie dollar is much lower, helping our exporters, no doubt, but iron ore still really high. So Josh Frydenberg will really be looking at that particular number very closely in the lead up to May, won't he?
Yeah, and it will provide the opportunities if he wants to increase that $2 billion spend on the bushfire repair and all the infrastructure that goes with it. He's going to have a lot more money to play around with. So in a perfect world, even if he doesn't get his budget surplus this year, he wasn't really expecting it this year anyway, but if it's a reasonable deficit and they're able to spend, and the iron ore price is critical because it just brings a hell of a lot of money into Treasury, that's going to be another plus. And he'll be watching that very, very carefully.
It won't be politically. If he's just in deficit, I mean, what do we do with all those Back in Black ads?
I think we'll get over that, Laura. I think at the end of the day, we're looking at the government to help the economy as opposed to just simply...
Is there really a chance that he could miss that target, though? Now, we were talking small surplus, then we were talking balanced budget, but you're saying a deficit is a real likelihood.
Yeah, the last number we got was a deficit of $1 billion, which is more than what they expected. But that's because there has been emergency spending straight away and all those sorts of things. I think the bushfire effect in the short term is going to mean that the deficit in terms of going to surplus is going to be a lot harder to achieve. And I think Josh Frydenberg knows that it's one thing to make a promise like that when you're not expecting, the bushfire event of the century or even of 2 centuries. But I think therefore he's going to just compromise that promise and go for the big picture, namely the economy, and they'll spend. And I think the budget will also show it as well.
There you go, Josh Frydenberg. You've been given a leave pass from Peter Switzer. Appreciate your time. We'll see you soon. See you Friday.